fighting industry. That's awesome that we got to collide. But anyways, my first question is, how has training been at American Top Team, the best gym in the world?
Yeah, it's been really good. Each week you kind of have one of the people that come back to the gym, and he's really the guy. This week it's Hanato Moicano. He just had a savage win over a very high level guy in Benoit Saint Denis in his hometown in France. So right now at the gym, he's the guy. But each week when you're at a gym like American Top Team, you just have a complete list of savages that are the guy. But training's going good. Training's always going good. For the most part, I'm pretty much always healthy just because I'm not very brittle and I'm durable. And even if I am a little bit injured, I still train through it. So training will always be going good. Right now, nothing new. I'm just grinding through it, just practicing every single day. Everything's going good.
And that's awesome to hear, man. I love your spirit, the way enthusiasm you have for training. And some fighters, like, they get up, and I've heard some things that they get lazy to train. And I know you're one of the guys that, like, you're the complete opposite, that you love training. And who are your favorite training partners down there at American Top Team?
Yeah, I'm one of the guys that I like to think of myself as a captain, someone that these guys can kind of look up to just because I'm friends with everybody. I'll talk to anybody. If you're in my weight class and you're just in there for a training cycle, I don't really mess with you. But other than that, for the most part, everybody at American Top Team, I'm willing to train with. Somewhat of the rule of thumb is you train with people your weight class, a weight class above, and a weight class below. Um, Before Hanato's fight, I actually was trying to go with him as much as possible. I think I have a wrestling background kind of similar to Benoit. I'm not a 155 pounder, but I can give good looks. So I was going with Hanato for a little bit. But I'm always training with my boy Pedro Munoz, very high level UFC vet. Always gets in there and bangs, puts on exciting fights. Marlon Moraes is still at the gym, even though technically he's retired right now, but he's still training very hard. Tony Gravely, I've been going with a little bit, even though he just moved back to North Carolina. I'm just training with a bunch of guys left and right. We got the Bashrat brothers that are training. One of them just had to unfortunately pull out of his fight because of a little bit of an injury. But those guys are savages. Those guys are good guys that are addition to this team at American Top Team. But watch out for the Bashrat brothers. Both those guys are good. They train hard. They're very nice. They're very respectful. They love the gym. And those are the teammates that you kind of want. The good thing is they're good everywhere. So whenever I train with them, I get good looks on the feet, get good looks on the ground. Overall, each month it's just new guys that come in and you get high level training and different styles.
I love that, man. And I've actually kept my eye on the Bashar brothers. I love those guys. All their fights are so high level. And you mentioned Pedro Munoz. I remember in another interview you mentioned Pedro Munoz was one of the first guys that welcomed you into the gym when you first came into American Top Team. How was your relationship with him been over the years?
Yeah, he's one of my closest friends at the gym. Right when I got down there, you kind of have the guys that have been through it kind of step up and welcome the newcomers in open arms. And that's exactly what Pedro Munoz and along with Charles Rosa did. When I went down there to American Top Team, I knew absolutely nobody. I knew no coaches. I knew no training partners. I didn't know anybody in the state of Florida. So from day one, when I walked in with Pedro opening me with open arms was just awesome. It's something that I'll never forget, because sometimes you go to these gyms and people are cocky and they think they're so tough and they think they're badasses, but that just wasn't the case at this gym. Usually the high level fighters are the nice ones and people that are welcoming you. If you go to a gym and everybody's kind of a piece of shit pussy and acting like they're all tough, chances are they're not very high level. They're just not really about it. That's just a rule of thumb. It's the same thing if you go to a bar and a guy's acting tough. That pussy doesn't want to fight you one-on-one. He's waiting for his friends to jump in. But Pedro Munoz is an absolute gangster, so he stepped up. He didn't feel like I was a threat when I first joined the gym. And we've just been good to each other from the get-go, maybe 5-6 years ago. So whenever he has a fight, I help him get ready. Whenever I have a fight, he helps me get ready. And even outside the gym, we talk to each other about everything, about life, financials, everything. He's just a guy that he's been through it. So you really want to pick his brain at all aspects, because knowledge is key.
And yeah, and speaking of fights and high levels, you last fought on August 16th against Lazaro Dayron. You haven't had an interview since that. That's why I wanted to catch you this time. Have you had the time to reflect on that? What did you think of the fight? What did you think of the scorecards. Like obviously, he did have an interview after the fight, but it was right after the fight. You didn't even get to rewatch it yet. But I thought it was a clear 29-27 for you. I just want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for starters, I don't do interviews just with everybody. When I'm on social media and when you're in PFL, Bellator, UFC, you pretty much have people hitting you up for interviews left and right. I haven't accepted any. This is actually the first one I've accepted because you're the gangster. But it was an unfortunate night. I thought I fought pretty good outside of the first round. In this crazy game of MMA, I will keep saying it in my interviews. Anything can happen, and that anything did happen. He caught me with a straight right, and he knocked me down. So he wins that first round. That second and third round, I thought were pretty clear that I won. It sucks. That's just the crazy game. That's why you got to respect this game so much. That's why I always say you have to celebrate the wins, because the wins are just so hard in this industry. Everybody at this level is so high level. I had this fight down here in Florida. That's where I'm living right now. So it was awesome to be able to fight at that Hard Rock Qatar, which is one of the best and coolest hotels and casinos in the world. But it's unfortunate that it was a draw. I would like to get that one back. I don't know if that's in the cards or what have you, but that was an unfortunate result. But I look back and I have no regrets. Obviously, it was not very good showing on my end. When I go back and I watch the fight, which I've watched about 50,000 times because this fighting shit is my life. This is all I care about. You ask me if I reflect on it. All I do every single day is I think about it, and I think about my other fights. That's just who I am because I'm obsessed with this. This is my life. And I'm upset not just with the scorecards of it being a draw, but I'm also upset with my performance. I can always do better, and I looked at areas where I just don't know what the fuck I was doing. But the good thing is that is my one fight where I had an absolutely terrible showing. And usually in a fighter's career, you have a couple one of those. So it's nice to get that one out of the back of my mind and out of the history books. And going forward, you're just going to see even better fights out of me.
And it's funny, you thought it was an off night for you. You, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, we thought you won that fight. So for that to be an off night says a lot about you as a fighter. And speaking of reflecting on every fight of your career, we got two guys that you were formerly matched against, Raufeon Stots and Marcos Breno. They're fighting in Saudi Arabia on October 19th on one of the biggest PFL shows of the year. I want to hear your thoughts on that fight because obviously you dominated Stots in the first fight. You edged him out in the second fight. You choked out Marcos Breno. I just want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of that fight and who you got winning?
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting fight. I beat the shit out of Stats the first fight, and then I still think I won the second fight as well. Breno, we had a good fight, and I choked his ass out and finished him. And I broke him down, finally got the neck, and then finished him. That's what I kind of had seeing play out in the Dayron fight. I did have his back at the end in the third round. My style kind of is grinding, and I have the best conditioning in MMA, and I finally did get that position on his back. He grabbed the fence, so I didn't get that position back. But, just quickly also going back to that Dayron fight, if you go back and you look, when the judges' scorecards are read, you see my corner in disbelief that it was a draw, and you see his corner and Dayron celebrating the draw. So usually that's kind of an indication of who actually should have won the fight. But, can't be looking back at that eyes forward. You're asking me about the Breno Stots fight, and I'm very excited for that fight. I think it's going to be great because I also do have Breno winning that fight. Breno's he's a very skillful fighter. He's good everywhere, good on the feet, good on the ground. Raufeon Stots, I just still don't think he's very good. He ekes out wins, and sometimes he is smart a little bit with his fighting and kind of just waits to the last 30 seconds to maybe put a stamp on a round to try to persuade the judges. But usually his fights are very, very close, and you can't really tell who won. Again, I believe I beat the shit out of Stots the first time, definitely beat him the second time also. I know that fight is in Saudi Arabia, and sometimes travel does affect fighting. Time changes, the long travel on the flight. So you kind of never know with fights like that. But I'm excited for the PFL to be going to Saudi Arabia. I love that we're tapping into that market. I think that's only good for this sport. We're trying to grow this sport. We're trying to make money for this sport. And this is the shit that we fucking need. We need shit like this. That card in general is going to be absolutely fucking awesome. It's great for the PFL, and it's great for MMA in general. It's great for the fans. I keep saying these people can't just want UFC. If you truly love fighting and you want to watch fucking fighting, don't you want more of it? So obviously you would have PFL on Friday, UFC on Saturday, but this fight with Breno and Stots is fucking bitch ass. I think Breno does win, and it'll be a high level fight.
And obviously, the last fight with Dayron, you haven't fought since that. I want to ask. I'm assuming you haven't been offered anything yet, so I kind of wanted to like throw a little fight suggestion out. You guys have traded jabs before on Twitter. You and C. Aaron Clark, who recently improved to 10-0 at Bellator Dublin, I believe it was. I want to know what you think of that guy, and what do you think of his performance, and what do you think of a potential fight with him?
Yeah, Syrian's a pussy. Me and him go back and forth all the time. I've been wanting to fight him for a fucking while. I know he's in Ireland, and those Ireland fighters are kind of soft. So I do think that would be an easy victory. And I usually don't like easy victories, but when I don't really like a guy, I kind of just want to smash his face in. So this is kind of a personal vendetta. You know, he's talked shit to me, and I've talked shit to him. It's time we finally fucking settle this. I don't know when we would be able to fight or if he's healthy or anything. I did see he just got the victory in that Bellator. Maybe it was in Ireland or so. But yeah, I'm looking forward to smashing him. I haven't been offered anything. You know, I always tell people I have never turned down a fight. So if I'm not fighting, it will never be because I was offered something and I turned it down. I don't turn down fights ever. I don't pull out of fights. That's just my style. You know, I also don't miss weight. I don't take any performance enhancing drugs. I am just a fighter through and through. So no, I haven't been offered anything, but I got the best manager in the game, Ali Abdulaziz. So he's always cooking something, and we should have news here shortly. Whether it's PFL, Bellator, I don't know. Hopefully, PFL develops this bantamweight division because it's the highest level that there is. But yeah, going forward, doesn't matter who it is. I've also been talking some trash to these Japanese fighters over in Japan and Ryzen, the Shinobu Oda guy. He just lost to my boy, but he's also another guy that I always like to fuck up. So there's a lot of guys on the list that I would like to fuck up. I just need Ali to just tell me when and where.
And obviously, we got another upcoming fight on November 16th in Paris. A former opponent of yours, Leandro Higo, fighting for the belt against Patchy Mix, who I think you should have been fighting in 2022 and in 2023 in April. I want to hear your thoughts about that fight because that's another big bantamweight fight in the Bellator bantamweight division. How do you think that's going to play out?
Yeah, Patchy Mix and Leandro Higo is another very, very high level fight. They're fighting for the belt. You know, of course, I smashed Higo, but he's a very good opponent. I think this is a very interesting stylistic matchup because Higo does have a tendency to be very good on the ground. I would consider him a ground fighter, more of a grappler than a striker. And we all know Patchy's striking sucks, so he's also a grappler. It could be a very interesting fight. You know, this is 5 rounds. I do think that conditioning is going to play a role in this. I don't see either fighter finishing this fight. They're just too high level and they don't really take too many risks or anything like that. But I think Patchy might edge him out, but I do see it possibly a split decision, if not 3 rounds to 2 rounds. But I would not be surprised if Higo won. Higo's very good. He's won a bunch of his last fights. He beat that Russian Mikhailov guy who was pretty good or was supposed to be pretty good. You never know. But I'm excited for that fight. That's a very high level fight. You know, that is the standard of this division is Higo versus Patchy. Those are the 2 guys that have the bullseye on them. Those are 2 guys that I want to fuck up. Obviously, I already fucked up Higo, and I will, no matter what happens, whether Patchy wins or loses, I will fight Patchy at some point in my career. And I do think it'll be the biggest fight in bantamweight history. I'm somewhat hoping that Patchy does win just because I know that fight is huge. You know, Sabatello versus Mix for the title would do absolutely numbers, would be good for the sport, would be good for this division. And we both want it. You know, Patchy was actually at my last fight in the PFL down here in South Florida. And he's the champion, and he knows that he wants to fight me because of how big of a fight that is. We had a couple words exchanged, and it's just funny because I don't fucking like that guy. I can't fucking stand him, but I know he does want to fight me because he knows it's a big fight. But who doesn't want to fight me? Everybody knows it's a big fight with me, and that's as high level as it gets. That's as big as it gets, and at some point that fight will happen.
I mean, speaking of words exchanged with Patchy Mix, obviously you guys have a history on Twitter, but one thing that people couldn't figure out is what you guys were talking about after that fight. I mean, what did you guys necessarily talk about after the Dayron fight when you walked into the crowd?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep that between me and him, but I think he does know that I don't fucking like him, and this is for real. I noticed body language, and a couple of times when I was saying shit, I noticed that he took a couple of steps back. You know, but we did have a little words discussion. The first thing that he did say is that he knows that I won that fight, which it's just unfortunate for everybody because everybody does know I won that fight. But even after he said that, I let him know, Patchy, whether I won or fucking lost, I don't fucking like you. Don't fucking talk to me. I don't know why you're saying nice shit to me. I want to smash his fucking face in. Even if he's saying nice things about me in interviews, which he has before, that's great. I still think he's a bitch. But that's just how it's gonna be. And I do know that we're gonna fight someday, and it's gonna be very high level. But until then, we just got to keep winning.
And those two fights I brought up, Raufeon Stots versus Marcos Breno and Patchy Mix versus Leandro Higo, they're under the different promotions. One's under PFL, one's under Bellator. You're the only bantamweight in that little roster that's fought under both. Which one did you prefer? Did you prefer the PFL, like the way PFL set up the things, or the other way Bellator did?
Yeah, very similar. To me, when you're going into a fight, you kind of have to have tunnel vision, and the outside factors can't really fucking matter. The production and everything, I think, is very similar. Bellator, PFL, to me, it doesn't really matter. They're both the highest of the highs. You're both getting massive viewerships, whether it be in the United States or throughout the world. Everybody knows both of those productions. Everybody's very nice. I got no problems and never had a problem with anybody in Bellator or PFL. The people that are behind the scenes are fantastic on both sides. Everybody's so nice. They're very accommodating. If you need something, they're there to help you. With this, we're trying to grow this sport and make it as big as possible and put on the highest level fights. So we're kind of a team in this together. So between Bellator and PFL, I think it's the same. I didn't really notice anything too differently. I know PFL loves me because how could you not love it when I fight for them? I know I'm the only guy in Bellator bantamweight that have fought for PFL, but that's not a coincidence. I am who people want to see when I do fight. I know a lot of people want to act like they're not watching or not paying attention, but everybody knows they're fucking paying attention. The bottom line is everybody fucking hates me, so they're not going to give me the credit or act like they're watching me. But I do know that people are watching me. We do know the numbers. There's people in the PFL and Bellator that know that type of shit. And it's funny, on fight week when I talk to them, they show me that people are trying to be sneaky and a lot of people acting like they don't acknowledge me or view. But, the numbers don't lie. So, between the two of the highest promotions, I know PFL just bought Bellator, so we'll see what happens there. Hopefully next year PFL has a bantamweight division. But until then, all I can focus on is just getting better at the best gym in the world and fucking winning fights.
Yeah, and speaking of which, obviously PFL and Bellator aren't the only two big stages you fought on. You fought under a very big stage that is currently active. It's called Dana Whites Contender Series. You fought there in 2020 during COVID times. I mean, you dominated the shit out of Taylor Moore. You got a 30-24 scorecard, and Dana White was just stupid not to sign you. I mean, what was the experience like under the Contender Series, especially during obviously the COVID pandemic times, and how did you reflect from that? Because I think your UFC contract should have been a no-brainer.
Yeah, it was a very unique situation. My whole life I always wanted to be in the UFC. And it was during COVID times, which was very odd because you also had to go there early for filming of pictures and interviews and all this stuff. And a lot of these guys would do the filming in Vegas and then fly back. But, I trained down here in Florida, and that flight from Vegas to Florida is pretty long. So I had the option of either staying in Vegas for, I think it was 7, 8, or 9 days, or fly back for a couple of days and then just go right back. So I decided to stay there in Vegas. So I was in Vegas for about 9 days training. I bought one of my boys, Sal, with me to train with me. And then my coaches obviously flew over right before the fight. But, it was a very good and a good experience. And I beat the fuck out of that guy. I have a lot of records in this game. And one of the records that I still do have is I have the only 30-24 scorecard on Dana White Contender Series history. So I like to think that it should be Dana White and Danny Sabatello's Contender Series. Just because I run that show, I own that show, I put on the best, most dominating performance. A lot of times in this game, obviously finishes are awesome. I'm always trying to finish fights. Finishes are great, but sometimes the better fighter doesn't always win when there's a finish. Anything can happen. But when you're straight up dominating somebody and get a 30-24 scorecard, that just shows one guy is just exponentially better than the other. And not only that, it turned out after I beat that guy, Taylor Moore, turned out that he was on steroids during that fight. He popped for steroids a couple of weeks later. So I did this against a guy on steroids and had a 30-24 scorecard. So to me, I look back at that. People probably think that I'm very salty over it. I think it was a great experience. I have no complaints over it. It was awesome. I got the win. I got a dominating win. I did it over a guy on steroids. It was in Vegas. It was awesome. It was one of the first few seasons. So Dana White didn't get me the contract. It sucked. It hurt for a fucking long time. It was pretty much a fuck you and a no in your face, but it blessed me to going into Bellator. So it was a blessing in disguise. I don't know how he didn't take me, but I'm somewhat glad he didn't, because now look at my life now, and you never know what would have happened, and who knows what will happen in the future. It's possible I could be in the UFC. It's possible I could not be in the UFC. Right now, all I want to do is just put on the biggest high level and most exciting fights ever.
And you mentioned it was one of your goals growing up to be on the biggest fighting stage in the world, and you're definitely on one of the biggest fighting stages in the world, regardless. But I wanted to ask you, who were your favorite fighters growing up as a kid? Like you said, you were growing up having a dream of the UFC, so surely you had someone you looked up to, and or maybe multiple guys you looked up to as role models for the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Having good role models is key, not just in fighting, but in life. But some of the guys that I looked up to, which is crazy, is the number one guy was Mike Brown. And you know who my head coach right now is Mike Brown. The best coach, best MMA coach inside the whole game. He's down here at American Top Team. Sometimes it still is crazy to me when we're talking, or, he's coaching me or anything and we're in practice. And I just think to myself, holy shit, this guy's my head coach. He's investing so much time in me. I remember growing up watching him. He was putting on crazy fights with Uriah Faber, and he's just a savage. Same exact thing with Thiago Alves, Pitbull. He was just an absolute animal inside the cage, and he's also one of my coaches at American Top Team. Also a local guy, Clay Guida. He's from Chicagoland area, and I'm from Chicagoland area. So he's one of the guys that I also like looking up to. Just another crazy animal. Every time he steps inside the cage, you kind of have to keep your eyeballs on that guy. He's still so crazy at 41 years old. He's got a fight coming up here against a young buck and Chase Hooper. That's going to be awesome. Clay used to come into my wrestling club's gym sometimes for his camps and wrestle around. And I remember looking over and taking a peek at him when he was wrestling and thinking how cool it was. So all these years later, now that I'm on the big stage, it's still cool to see that he's still going.
And that's awesome that back then you were looking at him, and now you're in a very similar spot as him. You're fighting in one of the most premier MMA organizations in the world, as I mentioned. And I want to do something real quick. So I want to matchmake the top of the UFC bantamweight division against the PFL bantamweight division. I kind of did something right here. I want to ask you, who you think would win these fights if they were to happen. All right, I'm going to start off with the champions, Merab versus Patchy Mix.
It's actually funny because I guess they do train together in Vegas. They have a similar or the same gym. And you never know if you can trust sources or whatever you hear, but I hear that Patchy would submit him. I don't know if that's happened in practice or not, but I hear that Patchy would pretty much easily beat him. That's a terrible matchup for Merab, just because Merab just goes. All he has is just takedowns. He can't hold anybody down, as we saw with Sean O'Malley or Peter Yan or any of his other fights. He doesn't have very good stand-up. So I would take Patchy not only to beat Merab, but to submit him. And I don't think that Merab's style fits very good again with Patchy. That's actually probably the worst stylistic matchup. A guy that is almost 6 feet tall, and Merab's a little midget. I think he's 4'8". So I don't think that would be very good for Merab. So I have Patchy by submission.
The next one is Magomed Magomedov versus Petr Yan 3.
Yeah, that's another good one. I know that Peter beat him once, and I also know that Magomed also beat him once. Peter is a little bit inactive right now, so it's hard to tell what he's got. I know he fought that Japanese guy that he looked good against him. I forgot that guy's name. But I'm going to have to go with Magomedov. I think he's too skillful, too well-rounded. The good thing with Magomedov is that he's good on the feet and on the ground. He had a very close fight with Patchy Mix. Petr Yan, he's got good grappling, but I don't think on the level of Magomedov. I think Magomedov would try to outsmart him this third time around. And who knows, we might even get that fight at some point. I hope we do get that fight at some point, just because usually when fights are 1-1, you need to figure out who's the better guy. But I'm going to give it to Magomedov.
My next one is Raufeon Stots versus Umar Nurmagomedov.
Oh, I think Umar beats Stots. Again, I don't think Stots is very well-rounded. I don't think he's very good. He's a grappler that thinks he's a striker. Umar is too smart for him. I don't think Umar's the best in the world or anything like that, but I think that his striking would pose a problem for Stots. And I also think his grappling is better than Stots. So I don't really know if there's a path to victory for Stots. One thing with Umar is I was kind of surprised that his grappling wasn't as good as I thought it was, and his striking was better than I thought it was. You never know what's going on in fights, and Corey Sandhagen is a tricky fighter, but one thing from I noticed from that last fight is, I don't know if we know enough about Umar, but knowing what we do know, I have Umar over Stots.
And speaking of Corey Sandhagen, I have him up next. Who do you think, Corey Sandhagen or Lazaro Dayron?
That's a tough one. I think either Dayron knocks him out or Sandhagen submits him. Sandhagen is very tricky. It's something with Sandhagen, though. He's very inconsistent. He's a very, very, very dangerous fighter. He's very good, very skillful. I don't know if it's mental or what it is, but he puts on these fights, and I noticed myself thinking, what happened here? I think he's a little bit inconsistent right now. I'm going to give the edge to Sandhagen. I think he would get it done against Dayron. Dayron's a heavy puncher. He's very good, a very respectable fighter. But I think he would be too much for Sandhagen. But Dayron can catch him. Those Cuban guys, those guys like Yoel Romero, like Dayron, they have massive power in their hands. That's just how they are. They're just big, strong, powerful guys, and they're very fast and explosive. So if they do catch you, it could be lights out. Fortunately enough for me, I'm tough as fuck. It's not lights out for me. Even if you think I'm dead, you could never fucking kill me in there. I'll always come back. But I'm going to give the edge to Sandhagen.
I got the last one before I got your match. The guys who are ranked currently right under the champion, Sean O'Malley against Leandro Higo.
Oh, I think Leandro Higo. One thing with this fight with Sean O'Malley is I think he got exposed a little bit. Obviously, they kind of babied him to the title just because, that guy brings in cash and he brings in eyeballs. So we kind of see who Sean is right now. I think he goes on a little bit of a decline right now. His next fight, I don't think they're going to be able to protect him. If his next fight's against Peter Yan or another killer like that, I think he might lose another one. I don't think Sean is very high level as people think. He's a sniper, absolutely. He sniped Aljamain Sterling, but again, if he doesn't have that snipe power and he doesn't catch you, I just think he loses fights. So I'm not going to go with Sean O'Malley there. I'm going to go with Higo. Higo could hold his own on the feet just as long as he doesn't get caught, but I think he takes Sean down and I think he submits him. We saw that Sean is not only very bad takedown defense, very bad grappling, but he's also very brittle and he just looks weak. When Merab was shooting in on his takedowns, Sean O'Malley's feet were going flying. He was like off the air maybe half the fight. I don't think he'd be able to stop a takedown from Higo, and Higo is very good on the ground, very good jiu-jitsu, unlike Merab, and I think Higo would find the neck and submit Sean O'Malley.
And for the last one, it's your fight. I think this is your easiest fight in the top 10 of the bantamweight division, which is why I wanted your thoughts on it. Yourself against Chito Vera.
That's a fight that would get me very excited, just because I would just pick at him and just pick him apart. I would absolutely murder him. That would be a very fun fight because I do know that he thinks he's a little bit of a savage, and I could tell he thinks that he's got a little bit of swag, but I would just absolutely outswag him, outclass him, and beat the fuck out of him. I would smash his face in. I would beat him on the feet and the ground. That's a guy that I don't know how he gets very lucky in these fights where he's getting the shit kicked out of him, and then he throws a Hail Mary and it lands. Look what he did against Cruz. And he's done it a bunch of times. He gets very lucky in his fights and in his career. But that's a guy that has no ground game. And on the feet, all he does is just get the fuck kicked out of him. And that's what I would do. You just throw volume at that guy. He's going to throw a Hail Mary. Maybe for 10 seconds around, you kind of have to be somewhat careful. But other than that, I would beat the shit out of him. That's a fight. Obviously, we're in two different promotions, so I don't want to call the guy out. But I would love to call him out because I know I would beat the fuck out of him. It would be a very exciting fight. It would be exciting for the fans. It would be exciting for everybody. And that's a fight that I do hope I get someday.
And speaking of call-outs, moving on to the next one. You could be the first person on the show to call someone's name out. I mean, have you got anyone in mind next? Because obviously you only fought once this year, and I know you always say in your interviews you wish you could fight every weekend. I mean, what next? Let's say next you get to pick the day the fight you get, what's your ideal next fight, uh, realistically right now?
Well, just looking at the cards and just looking at who's available, I'm always eyeing the champ because I need to be the champion. I would call out Patchy Mix, but obviously that's really not in the cards. He's got a fight lined up and what have you. But one thing that I would love is I would love to go back to Japan. I need to get that one back. Last time I went there, I fought the Russian and I took him down easily and was cruising and then got caught. But I need to redeem myself in Japan. The people over there in Japan love me. I love them. They're very, very high intelligent fans over there. I would love to go to Japan and beat the fuck out of this guy, Shinobu Oda. He's talking a little bit of trash to me, but I'll fight any one of those Japanese fighters. I'll fight one of the PFL or Bellator fighters, but I would love to go over there to Japan and get that one back. Just looking purely at the schedule and what cards I could potentially be on, that seems like a card that would be next for me. I'm hoping it's next. I do think that's next. But I hope I get on that Japanese card and I redeem myself. I love fighting over there in Saitama Arena. I think it's around 40,000 fans packed. And they're doing is just analyzing you. They love this sport. They're very intelligent. I got a lot of fans over there. I still got people hitting me up and they're talking Japanese to me left and right. And I don't even speak that, but I love it. I know it's very respectful. They know what they're doing over there. So I would love to go over there in Japan and get that one back over Shinobu Oda.
Japan, right? You mentioned you fought there. You fought in a lot of other locations. You fought a couple of times in Hawaii. You fought on the Contender Series in Vegas. You fought in your hometown of Chicago, Illinois, against Stots last November. You fought obviously in Hollywood, Florida last time. You fought in Connecticut against Stots the first time and against Higo. What has been the best experience you fought someone? What was the most electric where you were just so hyped to fight in this arena or this place?
Yeah, I've fought all over the world. I've been in the coolest places, like you've mentioned, Florida, Chicago, Hawaii, Connecticut, Tokyo, Japan, Vegas. I've fought everywhere. It's cool going to these places, but these places are business trips. I don't make a vacation out of this shit. There's nothing vacation about this. I get paid to go over there and beat the fuck out of somebody. And I don't care if it's in an alley. I don't care if it's in North Korea. I don't care if it's in my apartment. It doesn't fucking matter to me. But the coolest place by far, Chicago, just because that's where I'm from. For up to me, I would fight in Chicago every fucking weekend. I got a lot of friends, family, fans, ex-teammates, coaches, everything over there. It's just absolutely electric there. That card was absolutely massive just because of the people that I brought out there. If you look at the crowd and you look at the Bellator events, that card in Chicago was insane because of me. But I love everywhere. Each place is very unique. Hawaii was very cool. I love going out to Hawaii. Who the fuck wouldn't like going out to Hawaii? Japan, where MMA started, all those fans, there's so many of them and they're very appreciative and respectful. One thing when you're fighting in that Saitama Arena in Tokyo is it's not like anywhere else where when the fights are going on, they are silent. You can hear a pin drop because they're obsessed with this shit. They want to absolutely analyze and see what's going on. You go everywhere else and the people in the crowd are yelling, fuck him up, take his head off, kill him, all this shit, which is cool too. I love that shit also, but it's just a very unique experience in Japan. It's unique everywhere, and Florida has its obviously South Florida vibe to it, which is just electric and very fun for everybody. So everywhere has its own unique feel to it. But being from Chicago, I would love to fight in Chicago all the time.
And speaking of Chicago, last year in 2023, there was a Bellator event in Chicago. It was the month before you were meant to fight in Japan. And I remember it so well. You posted on your Instagram story that Nikita Mikhailov turned on a fight with you. You called him a little bitch in the story, which I agree with, because why the fuck would he decline a fight? Wouldn't he want to get his ass whooped by the face of the bantamweight division? Anyways, how close was that fight to materializing? Because that would have been the first time you fought in Chicago. Obviously, the first time was last November, but you did have an initial one in June. What was up with that?
Yeah, that fight was very close to happening. Obviously, I've never turned down a fight, and some things happen behind the scenes that a lot of fans don't know about. And a lot of times they get two different sides and two different stories, and you kind of just can't come up with what's right and what's wrong. It is a 100% fact that I can say I accepted the fight with Mikhailov, and he turned it down. We were supposed to fight in Chicago. Obviously, these promotions want the hometown guys to fight on their card because it's good for everything. It's good for business. It's good for everybody. So they tried as hard as they could to get me on that card. It was going to be against Mikhailov, and he said no. Obviously, he's fucking scared. He's a bitch. He knows I would fuck him up. But it could have been a big step up in his career. It could have brought him publicity, and it would have got him in with the promotion and have them like him. When you say yes all the time in these promotions like you. They want a guy that isn't a high maintenance prima donna, scared little bitch turning down everything. And that's what that guy was. It would have been awesome to fight him in Chicago. I am always itching to fight in Chicago. I'm always itching to fight in general. But yeah, Mikhailov turned that fight down in Chicago. It's unfortunate. But, a lot of people have turned down fights with me. Sometimes I get it just because they know I would mop the floor with them. But other times I just don't get it. If you're high level and you're training to be a champion and it would do you a favor down the road, I don't know why you wouldn't say yes. But that's unfortunately what happened there.
And I want to know your thoughts on this.
That is the sickest shirt ever. That's what the fuck I'm talking about. I love that you have that. You got to rep that. That's awesome, bro.
Of course, bro. I got it. I think last year before the Magomedov fight, and I just wear it every time you fight, and it's so sick because, now I'm gonna get an interview, which is even more sick.
Yeah, dude. And the cool thing is about my fans is I keep telling people that I have the biggest Savage fans. I got the toughest fans. I got the people that know exactly what the fuck fighting is all about. I got the most intelligent fans, friends, family, teammates. If you're on the Sabatello Italian Mafia train, we don't have the most fans in the world. We're not Conor McGregor where we just have anybody and everybody. We're a train full of absolute savage killers, and we know what the fuck we're doing. And it's only going to get better from here.
And obviously, sabatellostan is your favorite fan, right?
That's what I'm fucking talking about, of course.
And one more question from my buddy was, what is your favorite Italian dish? He specifically asked this, like right before the interview was about to happen. He wanted to ask you, what's your favorite Italian dish?
We all know Italian food is the best food in the world. I love everything Italian. If it were up to me, I would have Italian every single meal. Unfortunately, Italian food has a lot of carbs, and I got to stay low somewhat relatively to 135. One thing with me is I always try to keep my weight low because if I get a short notice fight, I will take it. Again, I love short notice fights because I'm always in shape and I'm always training twice a day, every day. So I can't necessarily always have Italian food. I love chicken parmesan, fried calamari, pizza, cold cut sandwiches. Come on, capicola, sopressata, salami, mortadella. It's all good. I love lasagna. I love mastacholi. I love penne alla vodka. I love spaghetti and meatballs. A meatball sandwich is great. But to me, I could eat pizza every single fucking meal. That's my shit. I love pizza. I try to not have it as often as I can, but sometimes I just fucking have to have it. So favorite food in the world is pizza.
And you mentioned like you're always in the training scene, like you love to train, you like to keep your weight low. What are your hobbies outside of training? I mean, what do you like to do in your free time?
I don't fucking have hobbies. I don't do those dumbass video games. I don't read books like an idiot. I don't do anything like that. I strictly just train, and my life is just revolves around fighting. This is a sport where you have to be absolutely obsessed with this and invested in this. This takes away from a lot of things. This takes away from family time because my family's up in Chicago. It takes away from friend time. I can't always be getting fucked up. The one thing about being down here in South Florida is probably the best party scene that there is. I could go to the beach and I could get fucked up at any point. There's girls walking around the street downstairs in bikinis. Of course, I could be having, a hard time with hobbies and partying and all that stuff, but I have to keep a tunnel vision. I don't really have many fucking hobbies. My hobby is to fight. My job is to fight. What I love to do is to fight. And that's kind of why I think I'm at the level where I'm at, is because I absolutely love this. I think if I didn't love this, I wouldn't be as good because I think that I would be too distracted. There's too much fun and too much good shit around me. But I don't really have too many hobbies. None. In fact, I don't really do anything. All I do is train.
I am so sorry about that. I don't know
Yeah,
what.
you're good. It's all good, dude. I was wondering what the hell happened because I'm so not tech savvy. I don't know shit about fucking laptops or anything like that. So I thought it was something on my end. I had no fucking idea.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, you were in the middle of talking about your hobbies outside of training. I mean, can we just like finish that one up, please?
Yeah, there's no fucking hobbies. I don't do anything. All I do is train. I'm obsessed with fucking training. Um, and I don't want to like anything else. You know, this fighting shit, you have to be absolutely obsessed with it. This takes away from family time, friend time. You know, a lot of things. But the fact of the matter is I'm just absolutely obsessed with fighting. And I don't want to like anything else. Nothing else really interests me. You know, I am obsessed with getting the belt, and I'm very smart enough to know that in order for me to get that belt, I need to be fully invested. I can't be doing shit like playing fucking video games and reading all these books and doing all this shit. I need to be thinking about fighting, watching fighting, training, writing down techniques, texting my coach about new shit. So not really too many hobbies. You know, I like to have as much fun as the next guy. You know, if it's time to party and it's, you know, necessary or we're celebrating a win, nobody parties harder than me. But other than that, yeah, no hobbies.
I love that warrior spirit, man, and you're so dedicated to your MMA journey. And speaking of it, obviously you have 14 wins in your career. Question I had was, out of all these wins, the Titan FC title defense over Damon Blackshear, the short notice Bellator debut against Brett Johns, the win over Higo that introduced you into the Grand Prix. Which one has stood out the most for you?
Fuck, that's tough. You know, all these fights are very unique. You know, you're going through different trials and tribulations of each fight. You know, a lot of shit happens behind the scenes, but I'm not a fucking guy that says, "Oh, I went into this fight and I was hurt and all this shit." So obviously, that each fight is going to be unique, and each victory is massive. You know, the biggest fight is always your next fight, and this might be a little bit of a surprise, but I think my biggest fight was probably the Lugo fight in Hawaii. I kind of think that one put me on the map. Before that, I don't think very many people knew who I was. Everybody that did know who I was knew I was talented, but let's see what I could do on the stage. I got the call from Bellator, and I went in there, and I beat the fuck out of Brett Johns. And people were kind of saying maybe I got lucky. You know, maybe I got lucky that I dominated the 10th ranked guy in the UFC that was just brought over to Bellator. So they put me in that Grand Prix tournament against this Lugo guy who was very dangerous, very skillful. He was undefeated. The most dangerous fighter in this game is an undefeated fighter. And I absolutely beat the fuck out of Lugo. I tortured him. That was a very fun fight. I think it was a very fun fight for the fans. I think that was a fight that fans thought, you know, maybe the most exciting fights aren't always on the feet. Sometimes you mix it up, it's on the ground. And that's what I showed, the high level pedigree of ground and pound and submission attempts on the ground with Higo or with Lugo. And I absolutely beat the shit out of him. So that's a fight, in my opinion, that will always stick out to me. But all these, each one is unique. You know, in an hour, if you ask me that question, my answer might change. You know, I really don't know. But right now, sitting here at this very second, I would say the Lugo one.
And that's a really good pick because you were literally on his back in the second round, punching his head in, and uh, kind of talking to the crowd, raising your arm. That's probably one of my favorite moments for you from you.
Yeah, that was just very fun in general, and a lot of people picked him to beat me. And obviously, with an undefeated fighter, everybody is so high on them. But I kind of just had my fun with that one. I'm in the middle of smashing this very high level undefeated fighter's face, and I'm talking to him, and I'm pumping up the crowd as I have both hooks in, and then I'm just wailing on his face. There's blood everywhere. I think blood got on a couple people in the audience. So yeah, that was a very fun one, and I hope to mimic that one again.
And obviously, into that fight, as you said, it's your biggest one. Mentally, you handled the pressure so well. It didn't even look like you were, I mean, like under pressure. Like you were saying your name with Michael C. Williams in the introduction. And I kind of want to get on that topic. Like mentally, how are you approaching these fights, man? Like in the Dayron fight, you were flipping some random guy in the crowd off. I was in the middle of a stressed moment, seeing one of my favorite fighters fight, and then I'm just like, this guy's flipping off this guy in the crowd. What the hell? I mean,
Yeah,
like, what is your?
It's just a mix of emotions when you're going into that cage. It's so much chaos that's going on before the fight, during the fight, and everything. But I kind of am just very relaxed. That's kind of where I'm at my happiest. To me, parties are great. Everything's fun. Seeing friends, family is fun. But the most fun in the entire world to me is being in that cage. And when that's truly the most fun to you, you have a relaxed and very confident self. And when I was in that fight with Dayron before the bell rang, there was some fucking idiot in the crowd flipping me off and talking shit. So just because I'm in the cage doesn't mean I'm going to give it right back to you. I had to let that guy know that I see him and that he's a fucking bitch too. So, it takes a lot of sensibility and a very relaxed vet to see exactly what's going on in all situations. Not only did I see that, but I also looked back and I saw that Ray Lewis was sitting cage side, and I saw Roy Jones Jr. was there. But that only happens when you're very relaxed in there. Adrenaline is a crazy, crazy thing. And when you're in there in that cage, most of these fighters wouldn't notice those things like that. But once you've done it enough and once you absolutely love this and you're not really too scared in there, you do these things. And it's just more of me being relaxed. I'm always going to be me. Inside the cage, outside the cage, right before the fight, during the fight. I'm the same fucking guy. I think as years go on, people have noticed that about me. Right when I came to the scene, they might have seen that I'm putting on some shtick or something. But as the time has gone on, I haven't changed a bit. I think fans have also gone to see who I was before I was fighting, and I was the same exact guy. So, again, I'm always going to be relaxed with everything I do, and I'm always going to be very confident with everything I do.
And speaking of the mental approach, I think it's a good time to ask this one. My buddy wanted to know, what is your approach heading to this next one? I mean, obviously, the last three, uh, one was a robbery against Stotts. The last one was one of the worst robberies of all time, and obviously the Magomed loss in Japan. Uh, I mean, what's your mental approach heading to this next one? Obviously, uh, people think your back is against the fence. You're trying to prove a point to all these guys that are doubting you, and who doesn't want to prove a point and prove these fucking idiots wrong. I mean, is there any different approach heading to this next one?
Yeah, you're always making tweaks, and depending on the opponent, that'll see where the approach will be. But just as a rule of thumb in general, just more aggressive. In this game, you just kind of have to accept that if you get caught, you get caught. That can happen, but you can't think about getting caught. I need to go out there and I just need to impose my will. I need to be more aggressive at all times. But also you do still have to be somewhat smart because you can get caught. You see what happened with me and Dayron. You see what happened with me and the Russian and Magomed and Japan. But, it's a crazy game. But in this game, water usually finds its level. Right now in my career, which I'm still young, I'm getting caught, which is very unfortunate. But that'll happen, and better now than later. I always say that I'm on a slow path to the top. I fight very smart. I don't take too much damage, and I'm always fucking getting better every single day. So I'm not even at my peak yet. Getting caught can happen. You can't fucking worry about that. That happens, but you don't always keep getting caught. When you're dominating guys and you're so much better than them, it doesn't keep happening. Obviously it always can, but chances of that happening aren't very great. You look at the fight with me and the Russian, and I was dominating him and got caught. You look at Dayron, I got caught. As long as I'm just absolutely aggressive, I don't change a thing because you have to give respect to this game that can happen. Everything will be fine. It's only a matter of time. We're still early on this journey. I will get the fucking belt. I will be the best in the world. I just got to stop getting caught. That's the bottom line. And that shit happens. It's such a crazy fucking sport. One thing that I just always keep saying, and people are probably sick of me saying it, is this isn't pussy ass football, baseball, basketball, hockey, whatever the fuck. You don't get a redo in this sport. This isn't, oh shit, I fucked up. Now let's see what happens. No, you fuck up, you could die in this shit. Not only do you lose, you're unconscious. So the margin for error in this sport is so slim. It's basically going back to your question, more aggressive, but also still have to be a little bit smart just so you don't get caught. But I just have to impose my will more.
And obviously, we spoke earlier about fight venues and locations, and this is one I probably should have asked you earlier. But obviously, couple of weeks ago, we saw the Sphere in Las Vegas, the bantamweight title fight I hosted. I mean, I wanted your thoughts on how the Sphere looked and the main event, Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili.
Yeah, the Sphere was sick. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity. It looked amazing on TV, which means that it is even more incredible in person. I can't imagine the fan experience there. I hope that they do more fights there. I know Dana White has said that he's not going to do another fight there, but I would highly doubt that. They probably will do another. This is just me talking, but they probably will do another one there, and it'll be sick again. I think it's a great idea to do shit like that. Obviously, it takes a lot of money to do it, but it's a very good investment. I think the ROI on that is going to be amazing just because a lot of fans tapped into that fight, not really because the card kind of fucking sucked. It wasn't really that great of a card. But just because of it was at the Sphere, it's something new, and the production was just amazing. You can sell fights just purely based off production too. But as far as the main events, it's very frustrating watching high level championship fights like that, just because I know that I would fuck the guys up. Obviously everybody looks at those two as some of the best in the world, and it kind of played out kind of how I imagined. I thought either Sean was going to knock him out and catch him on the way in and snipe him, or Merab would just keep taking him down, and that's what happened. I keep saying Merab doesn't have good grappling. In fact, it's actually bad. I think he has very bad grappling. He's got good takedowns. He takes guys down maybe 50 times a fucking fight. He's got good cardio, but he can't hold anybody down. So to me, it was just Merab taking him down, and O'Malley couldn't stop anybody from taking him down. There wasn't really many big moments in the fight. I know towards the last 30 seconds, maybe minute, Sean caught him with a good teep kick to the body, which you could tell hurt Merab. But other than that, I didn't think the fight was too good, too great. But there's no reason that Sean couldn't have won that fight. If you look at actually the stats, that should be considered a stand-up fight because most of the fight did take place on the feet, strictly because Merab couldn't hold him down. So Sean had an abundance of opportunities to knock him out or catch him. I just don't think he could find him. So once again, going back to what I was saying earlier, if Sean doesn't catch you, he doesn't look too good. And Merab, I think, also has bad grappling.
Another question I wanted to ask is, how do you think you match against those two guys? I mean, obviously, you did mention you weren't really shocked with the result of what happened. So I'd assume the same way you viewed them before the fight is the same way you're going to view them now, because that's how you expected the fight to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are two matchups that I would absolutely love, whether it's for a fucking belt or not, whether it's for $50 million or for free. I would fight both those guys tomorrow. Actually, I would fight them in like 10 minutes, but it would be a very easy fight for me. Those are two guys just stylistically. Sean, he again would need to knock me out. He would have to catch me slipping, but I just don't see that happening. If I fucking take that guy down, he's so brittle. I break his fucking bones. I could snap his neck. I could snap his legs. I could snap his arms. That would be very easy. He's also, not only is he bad grappling and bad takedown defense, but he's very brittle. And I don't know how I'm the only one seeing this. I think he gets hurt very easily. If I went out there, I'd probably go out there and I would just throw the hardest kick of my fucking life. And I don't care if it hits bone on bone or whatever. That seems like a guy that his shit would just shatter. So I think he's very brittle, very vulnerable. And then you look at Merab, I don't see a path to victory for him. His path to victory with all his opponents are just relentless takedown, takedown, takedown. First of all, he's not fucking taking me down. And even if he did take me down one time, I could get right back to my feet easily, not only because of my grappling skills, but because he can't hold anybody down. And then I believe I had better stand up than him. I would tune him up on the feet, and I would easily take him down. This is a fight where it's frustrating to me because he is the champion of the world right now, and there's no way he would beat me. Zero, none. 5-round fight. I also believe I have better conditioning than him. I think I have the best conditioning in MMA, but I do know that he has good conditioning too. So I think it would be a very fun fight, but I don't know how Merab would beat me.
Yeah, and speaking of Merab and Sean, obviously they're in a different organization in the UFC, and you're under the PFL and Bellator banner. I mean, my first question was I wanted to know how many fights you have left on that deal. And my second question was what would your ideal place be to head after your contract is up? If you are a free agent, would you like to head to Japan and Ryzen, one championship? Obviously the UFC. I mean, what would you like to do?
Yeah, I don't know how many fights are left on the contract. I leave that shit up to my manager Ali. I have full trust in him. I just focus on when and where. I focus on getting better. A lot of these guys kind of get caught up in that, and they kind of get a little dreamy. I like to call it. I don't really care who I fight. When you think you're the best in the world, you don't really care who the fuck it's going to be. You don't care when it's going to be if your weight is always low. I'm very big for the weight class. I'm 5'10", which is tall for bantamweight. But I keep my weight down because I'm very disciplined. Um, so I don't know how many fights is left on the contract, but even when it is up, I would like to stay with the PFL and Bellator. I think we got a good thing going. I want to be a part of history. I want to build something. Obviously you can go somewhere and where it's huge, but you can also be a little bit of a rebel and an outcast, and you can build something. You don't always have to follow the grain. Fighting is fighting, and you don't do this for any of the fucking casual fans. Those people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. A little inside information: fighting is the same everywhere it is, no matter the organization. The difference might be a camera, so the canvas might be a little bit different somewhere else, and the sponsorships might be a little bit different. But to me, it's not that big of a deal where it is, just as long as I am fighting. I like to be active. I need to fight 5 times a year just to stay sane. Sometimes when I don't get a fight for a while, I drive myself fucking crazy. But yeah, I would like to stay with the PFL as long as I can. So yeah, I would like to stay there, but I don't know how many fights is left.
And before I let you go, I actually have one more thing for you off camera after this thing ends. But do you want to leave any message or a shout out to anyone for the public?
Nope, nothing.
All right, thank you so much for your time, bro. And I got something for you off camera.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just gonna end it.